Hello students, welcome to Learner's Planet. Let us again continue with the topic tissues, and in the previous session we had started with the plant tissues. We were studying about the permanent tissues and we came to know that these plant permanent tissues, they are of two kinds. That is, they could be simple or they could be complex. So the simple permanent plant tissues are those which are made up of only single type of cells, whereas the complex tissues, they are those which are made up of more than single type of cells which are performing the same function and which are having the same origin. So, although they are made up of different kind of cells, they have been converted into different forms, but the origin is common. In the previous session, we had completed with the function of xylem, structure and xylem tissue. Now let us brief out about the phloem tissue. So here it is a flow chart which is giving us a brief idea about a complex tissue. So these complex tissue, they are which one? Those which are composed of more than one type of cells. Now these complex tissues, they are also known as vascular tissue or conducting tissue. Why? We have discussed in detail in the previous session. Vascular, because these tissues are forming the vessels, and these vessels, they actually help in conduction of various material in different directions. So thus they are called as vascular. It is in relation with the vessel. And conducting tissue, as they are transporting material from one side to the another. Now, depending upon whether they are conducting the transport of food material or water and mineral. So, depending upon these, they are of two kinds. What are they? Phloem and xylem. So, this xylem we have studied completely in detail in the previous session. What we have studied? That these xylem, they are composed of dead cells and some part is living. In the xylem, they are having tracheids, vessels, fibres and parenchyma. These fibres, tracheids and vessels, they are dead in nature. But although they are dead in nature, therefore they can provide mechanical strength to the plants. And when they mature, they form the wood. And in the young condition, these tracheids and vessels, they form sort of pipe inside the trees or in the plants, and thus they help in transportation of material, that is water and mineral, from soil to the upper part of the plants. Besides this, they are having parenchyma tissue. So parenchyma is basically, it is meant for the storage of food material so as to supply the raw material and energy for the maintenance of these xylem tissue. And also they can help in the lateral transduction or lateral conduction of these water and minerals. Now in today's session, we are going to study in detail about phloem tissue, which is meant for the transportation of food and material. Food material. Now, where this food is present? So, food is basically it is in the form of starch. Starch is made up of glucose, and where this glucose is synthesized? It is in the case of green part of the plant. So, the function of phloem is to transport this synthesized starch or food material from its synthesis site to the other site. If they are helping in the transport of material from synthesis site to the other site, then what is this other site mean here? So it is the site where it is going to be stored. For example, that could be even stem region itself or the root, or it could be some fruit or vegetable and so on. So whatever site, it has to be transported to its storage site. Now from the storage site, we are saying it is even transported to other site. Now what's this other site more here? It is that we can say like it is a growing site. Growing site, that means what? The site of the cell division. Now why the cell division site need this stored food material here? It is for the purpose of obtaining the raw material and the energy for the rapid division of the cells. So it is now, I hope, very clear that basically food is providing us with the raw materials as well as energy as well as the regulatory molecules and so on. So all these material are needed at different part of the body, either for the maintenance purpose, for storage purpose, or for the growth purpose. So initially, the food from its synthetic site or its synthesis site, it is transported to storage site, and from here it will be transported to the site where there is a need for this particular material. At that site, it will be metabolized and it is going to provide energy for the maintenance or the metabolic function or for the growth of the plant. Now, the phloem tissue, we are saying it is a complex tissue. That means it is made up of different type of cells. Although they are having the same origin, but they are having somehow differences in its structure and the basic mechanism of how it is supporting the conduction. So depending upon these, they are made up of various elements. Let us study each one by one. So these elements are sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem parenchyma, and the phloem fibres. Now out of all these sieve tubes, companion cells, and phloem parenchyma, they all are basically living cells. So we can just highlight these 3 points here. All these are actually living cells. They form the living part, or they are comprised of living cells. Whereas this fiber, the phloem fiber, is dead in nature. Now compare this particular property with that of the xylem tissue. In the case of xylem tissue, almost 3/4 part of the tissue was dead. As we have already stated, like tracheids, vessels, and fibers, they are the dead part of the xylem, and parenchyma was living in that case. So now can you just imagine a particular advantage or a particular property that is provided due to this living and dead nature by each type of tissue? Phloem, let us say xylem, is having maximum dead part. So it is able to support the structure, support the integrity of the plant, right? As it is dead in nature. The cells which are dead in nature, they are rigid in nature, they are stiff, so they are having lignified cell walls, and all these properties actually add to the mechanical strength of the plant. So xylem tissue, on the one hand, it is serving as a vascular tissue, and on the other hand, it is also providing the mechanical strength to the plant. Is this point or is this property possible with phloem tissue also? No. Here, maximum part is living. So now these living cells, they generally are devoid of lignified cell walls. Lignin is a rigid material. It provides stiffness. So if it is lacking this special property, then of course they are not able to provide the mechanical stability to the plants. So the phloem is actually, or it is exclusively involved in the conduction processes. Conduction of what? Conduction of food material from its synthesis site to the different sites. Now let us study each and every part in detail. So the first part is sieve tubes. You know what we mean by sieve tubes? You know the meaning of sieve. Of course you must be knowing. Sieve means a porous material, and tube is of course something cylindrical, we can say. So these part of the phloem tissue, they are we can say perforated tubular structures. Now let us study in detail what we mean by this particular point, the perforated tubular structure. So the first important point regarding this tube is that they are slender, or they are tubular structures. You know what we mean by slender? A cylindrical structure which is narrow in nature. So this we can say is just a slim and trim kind of tubular structure. So further, these slender or these tubular structure, they are these cells here, they are elongated. That means they are long, and therefore they appears like tubular or the slender in nature. Now the wall of these particular cells is thin. Why it is thin? Because there is no lignin deposition, and there is of course cellulose and hemicellulose present in the cell wall. But although we are calling it a thin wall, but if the thickness is not as low as the meristematic tissue. But of course they are thin in nature. Besides this, walls are perforated with pores. What does it mean? So now this is a very important point, due to which these part of the phloem tissue are getting their name. So what we mean by this is that the cells which we are discussing here, they are actually arranged one above the other, as we have studied in the case of xylem tissue. They were tubular structures, they were cylindrical structures which were arranged in a row one above the other, and the transfer wall was dissolved in the case of xylem vessels. Now if we study about the phloem sieve tubes, then these tubular elongated cells, they are also arranged in a row here, and when they are arranged in a row, the transverse wall of this particular type of cell is not completely dissolved. We can just understand it with the help of this diagram. If these are the cells or the slender cells which are arranged here, then they are actually arranged one above the other. So if they are arranged in this way, the transverse wall, that is these particular regions, they are actually not completely dissolved. Rather, they are perforated. They are forming pores in between. Suppose these, let us say this is the junction. So these walls are having gaps in between. And if these gaps are present, they are able to intercommunicate with each kind of, cells which are present below and above this thing. So these are actually helping in the intertransduction or intercommunication of these particular cells. They are having pores in between, so they are called as sieve plate. And as they are arranged one above the other, so they are forming a kind of vessel. But it could not be called as a vessel because it is not continuous completely. The wall is not completely dissolved. So we are calling the structure as a sieve plate. These perforated disc in between the two adjacent cells, that is known as sieve plate, and the structure or a row of such cells is known as a sieve tubes. Now these particular cells, we can say that in this case, they do not contain the nucleus, but still the cells are alive. Now imagine, if the nucleus is absent, how a cell could be alive? Actually, the point is that the mature cells of the sieve tube, they are lacking nucleus. The nucleus degenerates when the cells get matured, and then they are having associated cells in their surrounding, especially known as companion cells, the second element of the phloem tissue. So those companion cells, they are actually having a large nucleus, and of course they are intercommunicating with the pores. So they are actually controlling the life of a sieve tube structures. And therefore, as they are perforated, so such type of connections, they help in the communication of different cells in upward direction as well as in the downward direction. And of course in the lateral direction too, as the companion cells are present in the surrounding. So we can see the diagram here also. This entire bundle, it is showing us a lateral section of a sieve tube, a phloem tissue. So these are actually the sieve tubes. These pink parts, they are known as sieve tube, and in between they are having the sieve plate. The transverse cell wall is highly perforated, and so we are calling it as a sieve plate. Now these are having some surrounding tissues. These yellow parts here, they are companion cells. Now they are present in close proximity to such cells. So what they are actually, how they are helping it, how they are supporting the tube here? It is by, as they are having the cytoplasm, as they are having the living nucleus, so they are actually controlling the internal growth or internal maintenance of the sieve tubes by intercommunicating the cells. Besides this, they are having parenchyma, which is shown here, and of course this is meant for various purposes, which we will of course discuss later. So the next part here is what? Companion cells. You can highlight it in this diagram. These yellow part, they are known as the companion cells. Now these companion cells, they are associated with sieve tubes. We are continuously saying that they are able to intercommunicate with each other. Can you imagine how? Just think about it. How is it possible? So dear students, we are continuously studying about plasmodesmata. We have studied this in the session of cell wall as well as in the session of when we are studying the xylem tissue. So these are possible because of the plasmodesmata. These are the pits which are present in between the cell wall, the pores which are present in between the cell wall, but we are not calling them as pits. Why? Because the pits were present in the case of xylem tissue, and it was a non-lignified cell wall basically. Here there is no lignification, so we can directly call these pores as plasmodesmata. So these plasmodesmata are actually the junctions between the two different cells. Let us say, if suppose this is a structure, it is a wall of a, suppose your sieve tube. I'm sorry. So these sieve tubes are having a gap in its cell wall. So these are forming the bridge with the cell wall of a companion cell. So this is how, like they are present here in a close proximity. The wall of each is connected with each other. But if it is connected completely, it is not dissolved, it is just connected. How? It is because of the presence of these junctions, which we call as plasmodesmata. So therefore they are able to transfer its cytoplasmic material and control the units or the material present inside the sieve tubes. Now these companion cells, they are the smaller cells, and they have the thin wall, and this thin wall provides it this advantage to intercommunicate with the sieve tubes in a better way. Besides this, it has to control its own functions, its own growth, as well as the growth of the sieve tube. So they are having the large nucleus and they are having the dense cytoplasm, and thereby they are able to control, they are able to interconnect with the surrounding tissues. Next part is phloem parenchyma. So these phloem parenchyma, they are the living cells having thin cell wall. Now since long we are studying about the parenchyma tissue. You remember the basic properties of these parenchyma tissue? They are the living cells, they are having the thin cell wall, then they are having intercellular spaces. Besides this, they have a large vacuole, they have a dense cytoplasm inside, and all these properties together provide its basic advantages as they are having the large vacuole. So vacuole, what is the major function of vacuole is storage of various material. So what happens in this parenchyma, they are actually meant for the storage of food material. Food is synthesized in the leaves. From the leaves, it is transported to what? To the parenchyma as well as to the companion cells and majorly to the sieve tubes. So these parenchyma, they will serve as the storage site. Some material is going to be stored within the parenchyma and the remaining will be transported to the sieve tube. From the sieve tube, it will be transported to the different part of the plant. Then if it is transported all through, then why this storage at this particular site is needed? Because since beginning we said another point, that phloem tissue is actually meant for transportation of material from its synthesis site to the storage site. So from where this partial or temporary storage is coming in this picture? Actually, what happens? This parenchyma associated with the phloem tissue is meant for because it is supposed to provide energy and the raw material for the maintenance of sieve tube also, for the maintenance of phloem tissue itself also. So for this maintenance, for this structural integrity maintenance, they are storing the material. Besides this, another point is that tubes which are formed, they are transporting in a particular direction, upward, downward, or whatever is there. But what about the lateral or the region which are present in the surrounding this particular phloem tissue? So that lateral transduction or the lateral conduction of food material is basically maintained by the phloem parenchyma. So therefore we are calling that these living cells, they have thin cell wall, and this thin cell wall actually help in the transport of material in the lateral direction, the part of the plant which is present or situated in surrounding the tissues. Besides, it is meant for temporary storage so as to provide the material and the maintenance of these phloem tissue also. So next part here is phloem fibers. These fibers, they are elongated and they are spindle shaped structures. Now elongated spindle shaped structures, fibers, you remember where we have studied? These are basically dead cells, and all these properties make us to remember about something like sclerenchyma. So those fibers are very much similar, or we can say these are those type of tissues only. Now they are having the narrow lumen inside. Here there is a spelling mistake in this case. It is not marrow, it is narrow. Narrow. So that's a partial mistake here. Let me correct it. It is narrow. So they are having the narrow lumen inside. This narrow lumen, it is a hollow space present within the spindle shaped structures, and it is of course very narrow. It is very less. Now the cells of these tissues are thick walled. The thickness is more in these cases. Now we can say why it is thick. You have to think about it now, as we are studying since long about the same point. Why these dead cells are having thick cell wall? The reason is because the wall is lignified. Means what? There is a deposition of lignin over the cellulose cell wall, and this deposition of lignin makes it thick, and secondly, it makes it stiff and hard. Now you can further imagine, you can think about that what advantage could be provided by such kind of thickness and rigidness. So these tissues, they provide mechanical strength to the tissue. Now we cannot say that these are providing strength to the entire plant, but of course these sieve tubes are stand erect is because of these mechanical tissues. So they help in maintaining the position of phloem tissue inside the plants. Besides this, these fibers are having economical and commercial value also. These fibers, they are used like, you must have heard about jute, right? Flax, hemp, all these are forming the fibers which are used for formation of the rope. And of course rope is having multiple uses, so that is used for different purposes, and therefore these type of fibers, they provide economical advantage also. Now after this much discussion, the very important point that is clear here is that all the elements of phloem tissue consist of living cells. So in the case of xylem tissue, a similar sentence was there, that all elements of xylem tissue consist of dead cells, except what? Except parenchyma in case of xylem. And here when we are discussing about phloem tissue, then it is fibers. So just to clear this point out, xylem tissue is having maximum dead cells and the living part is only xylem parenchyma. In phloem tissue, all elements are consisting of living cells except phloem fibers, and therefore these fibers provide mechanical strength for the maintenance of these structures. Now let us brief out the occurrence. As these tissues are meant for transportation from leaves to different parts, then they must be distributed in all parts of the plant. So here is the diagram of a leaf. This picture is showing that it is showing the location of phloem. See, there is a detailed structure. So let us just concentrate over the phloem part. This pink structure is showing the vein of the plant, of the leaf. So these are the vein, or we can say like midribs. What these midribs they are made up of? Basically parenchyma, sometimes supported by sclerenchyma, but not usually. It is mainly made up of parenchyma. Now these parenchyma, they provide, we can say, flexibility to the structure. And in between these tissues, there is a location for xylem and phloem tissues. Now these xylem and phloem tissue, they are arranged together inside these structures, and these together, which are present together, they are arranged in a conical form, and thus together they are known as vascular bundles. So this is how these are present inside the cells. So this is the location. Now this is just a structure of a stem. It is of a leaf midrib. But whatever stem or these are present, all over these are present or situated in the central pith region of the organs, or the stem or the root or whatever. So this is how they are distributed in almost all parts of the plant. Now the next function. After this much discussion, there is, I think, no need for describing the entire part in so detail. But in brief, we can say that the function is to transport food material from where? From leaves to where? To the different parts of the plant. Which parts? Where they have to be stored. Then from there, they will be transported to the energy requiring site, or to the site of growth, as the food can provide energy as well as raw material for the maintenance of the existing part as well as growth of the new parts. That means they can support the cell division by providing these raw materials. So this is all about the phloem tissue, and with this we are ending up with the topic complex tissues. Next we are going to study about the protective tissue. So thank you so much, and we'll meet you soon in the next session. Till then, goodbye.